Human baby spotted a bleeding bear cub and led it to the hospital. What happened next was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning air felt different that day in the small mountain town of Cedar Falls. Mia Chen had just turned 18 months old, and her tiny fingers pressed against the cool glass of the kitchen window while her mother, Dr. Elena Chen, prepared breakfast. The house sat at the edge of town where the forest began, and Mia loved watching the trees sway in the morning breeze. "Mama, look!" Mia pointed outside with her chubby finger, though her words came out as excited babbles that only Elena could understand. Elena glanced over from the stove where she was scrambling eggs. "What do you see, sweetheart?" She walked over to join her daughter at the window, expecting to see a squirrel or maybe one of the neighbor's cats, but what she saw made her heart skip a beat. A small bear cub, no bigger than a medium-sized dog, was stumbling across their backyard. Its dark fur was matted, and even from the distance Elena could see something was terribly wrong. The cub was moving in an unsteady way, stopping every few steps to rest. "Oh my goodness," Elena whispered, instinctively pulling Mia back from the window. As a doctor at Cedar Falls General Hospital, she had seen plenty of injuries, but never on a wild animal this close to her home. Mia pressed her face back against the glass, her breath fogging up the window. The cub had stopped near their garden fence and was looking directly at the house. Its small dark eyes seemed to be searching for something or someone. Elena reached for her phone to call animal control, but before she could dial, something extraordinary happened. The bearded cub let out a soft whimper, and Mia responded with her own gentle cooing sound. The cub's ears perked up, and it took a tentative step closer to the house. No, baby, we need to stay inside," Elena said, but Mia was already toddling toward the back door with surprising determination. The cub was now at their fence, and Elena could see the source of its distress. Blood was seeping through its fur on the left side, creating dark patches that caught the morning sunlight. The animal was injured, possibly badly, and it seemed to be seeking help. Elena's medical training kicked in, but her maternal instincts were in conflict. This was a wild animal, potentially dangerous, but it was also clearly suffering, and her baby daughter seemed inexplicably drawn to it. Mia had reached the back door and was patting it with her small hands, making soft sounds that almost seemed like she was trying to communicate with the cub outside. Through the glass door, the bear cub had positioned itself as close as possible to where Mia stood, separated only by the thin barrier of glass and screen. "This is impossible," Elena murmured to herself. She had heard stories of unusual animal behavior, but this seemed beyond explanation. The cub appeared to be responding to Mia's presence, and more concerning, Maya seemed to understand that the animal needed help. Elena's phone buzzed with a text from the hospital. They were short-staffed and needed her to come in early. She glanced at the clock, 7:30 a.m. She wasn't supposed to work until the afternoon, but emergencies were common in their small town's only hospital. She looked back at Mia and the bear cub, both of them still positioned by the door as if they were having some kind of silent conversation. The responsible thing would be to call animal control, get Mia away from the window and head to work. But something in the cub's eyes stopped her. The animal looked desperate, and Mia's unusual behavior suggested something deeper was happening here. Elena had always believed that children sometimes sensed things that adults missed, and Mia had been unusually perceptive since she was born. The cub suddenly collapsed near the fence, its breathing becoming labored. Elena could see its small chest rising and falling rapidly, and the blood on its fur seemed to be spreading. "Mama," help," Mia said clearly, one of the few words she could speak distinctly. She was pointing at the cub and then at Elena, as if she understood exactly what needed to happen. Elena made a decision that would change everything. Instead of calling animal control, she grabbed her medical bag from the hallway closet. If this cub was going to survive, it needed immediate attention, and the nearest veterinarian was 30 miles away in the next town. She gently moved Mia away from the door and stepped outside, her heart pounding. The cub looked up at her with eyes that seemed far too intelligent for such a young animal. It didn't run or show any signs of aggression. Instead, it made a soft sound, almost like it was asking for help. Elena approached slowly, speaking in the same gentle tone she used with frightened patients. "It's okay, little one. Let me see what's wrong." The cub's injury was worse than she had thought. It appeared to be a deep puncture wound, possibly from another animal. Or maybe it had gotten caught on something sharp. The bleeding was steady, and the cub was clearly in shock. As Elena began to examine the wound, she heard the back door open behind her. Mia had somehow managed to unlock it and was toddling across the yard toward them. "Mia, no, stay back," Elena called, but her daughter continued forward with that same determined expression. The most remarkable thing happened next. As Mia approached, the bear cub's breathing seemed to calm. It turned its head toward the little girl and made a soft churring sound, almost like a cat's purr. Mia sat down beside the cub and gently placed her tiny hand on its uninjured side. Elena watched in amazement as the cub relaxed under Mia's touch. Its rapid breathing slowed, and some of the panic left its eyes. It was as if Mia's presence was providing some kind of comfort that Elena's medical training couldn't offer. "This is incredible," Elena whispered, continuing to clean the cub's wound while Mia sat beside them, humming a wordless tune. But their peaceful moment was interrupted by a sound that made Elena's blood run cold. From the forest beyond their yard came a deep, rumbling growl. The mother bear had found them. Elena's hands froze over the cub's wound as the growling grew louder. She could hear heavy footsteps crushing through the underbrush, getting closer with each passing second. Her mind raced through different scenarios, none of them good. A mother bear protecting her injured cub was one of the most dangerous situations anyone could face in the wild. "Mia, we need to go inside right now," Elena whispered urgently. But her daughter seemed completely unaware of the danger. Instead, Mia continued humming her little tune and stroking the cub's fur with gentle movements. The strange thing was, the bear cub didn't seem alarmed by its mother's approach either. If anything, it appeared more relaxed now that Mia was beside it. Its breathing had steadied, and the bleeding from its wound had slowed considerably. Elena had never seen anything like it in all her years of medical practice. The mother bear emerged from the tree line, and Elena's breath caught in her throat. The animal was massive, easily weighing over 300 pounds, with thick black fur and intelligent brown eyes that immediately locked onto the scene in her backyard. Elena expected the bear to charge, to roar, to show some sign of aggression toward the humans who were near her injured cub. Instead, the mother bear stopped about 20 feet away and sat down. Elena blinked, certain she was seeing things wrong. The bear was just sitting there, watching them with what could only be described as curiosity. Her massive head tilted slightly to one side as she observed Mia's gentle interaction with the cub. "This can't be happening," Elena murmured under her breath. Everything she knew about wildlife behavior said this situation should have ended very differently by now. Mia looked up from the cub and noticed the mother bear for the first time. Instead of being frightened, her face lit up with the same joy she showed when meeting new people. She waved her tiny hand at the massive animal and made happy babbling sounds. The mother bear's ears perked forward, and she made a soft huffing sound in response. It was almost like she was answering Mia's greeting. Elena felt like she was watching something impossible unfold. The cub was now trying to lift its head higher, looking back and forth between Mia and its mother. Elena could see that, despite the injury, the little animal was becoming more alert and responsive. She made a decision that went against every safety protocol she had ever learned. Instead of retreating to the house, she continued treating the cub's wound while keeping a careful eye on the mother bear. The wound needed immediate attention, and something told her that the mother bear understood this too. As Elena worked, she noticed something else unusual. The cub's injury wasn't from a predator attack or accident. The puncture wound was too clean, too precise. It looked almost like it had been made by some kind of tool or sharp object. Her medical training kicked in as she examined the wound more closely. "This looks like it could be from a tranquilizer dart," she said quietly to herself. The hole was small and round, exactly the size that would be left by a veterinary dart. But why would someone be tranquilizing bear cubs in the forest near her home? The mother bear suddenly stood up and moved closer, but her approach was careful and non-threatening. She stopped just a few feet away and lowered her massive head to sniff at her cub. The little one responded with soft chirping sounds, as if it was telling its mother what had happened. Elena watched in fascination as the mother bear then turned her attention to Mia. The huge animal moved even closer, until her nose was only inches from the little girl's face. Elena's heart pounded, ready to grab her daughter and run if needed. But Mia simply giggled and reached out to touch the bear's snout with her tiny fingers. The mother bear allowed the contact, even closing her eyes briefly as if enjoying the gentle touch. "Oh my God," Elena whispered. She was witnessing something that would be considered impossible by any wildlife expert. The mother bear was not only tolerating human contact with her injured cub, she was actively engaging with Mia in what appeared to be a friendly manner. The sound of a car door slamming in the front driveway broke the magical moment. Elena heard footsteps approaching around the side of the house, and panic set in. If someone saw this scene, there would be chaos. Animal control would be called immediately, and both bears would likely be captured or worse. "Elena, are you back there? Your car's in the driveway, but you're not answering the door." The voice belonged to Marcus Rivera, Elena's colleague from the hospital who lived just down the street. Elena's mind raced. Marcus was probably coming to check on her since she hadn't shown up for her shift yet. The hospital must have sent him when they couldn't reach her by phone. She realized she had been so focused on the bears that she hadn't even heard her phone ringing. "Stay here and keep being gentle with them," she whispered to Mia, knowing her daughter couldn't fully understand but hoping she would continue her calming influence on the bears. Elena quickly moved toward the side of the house to intercept Marcus before he could see what was happening in the backyard. The mother bear watched her go, but didn't follow, seeming to understand that Elena was trying to protect them. "Marcus, I'm here. Just give me a minute," Elena called out as she rounded the corner of the house. Marcus was standing by the front door, looking concerned. He was a fellow emergency room doctor and one of Elena's closest friends since she had moved to Cedar Falls 3 years ago. He was also someone who would immediately recognize the danger of the situation if he saw it. "Elena, what's going on? The hospital has been trying to reach you for over an hour. Dr. Peterson had to cover your shift, and we were getting worried. It's not like you to just disappear." "I'm so sorry, Marcus. There's been a family emergency. I had to deal with something urgent with Mia." It wasn't entirely a lie, Elena reasoned. This was definitely urgent, and it did involve Mia in an extraordinary way. Marcus looked past Elena toward the backyard, and she quickly moved to block his view. "Is everything okay? Do you need help with anything?" No. Everything's under control now. I just need a little more time to sort things out. Can you tell Doctor Peterson I'll be in as soon as possible? Maybe in another hour or two?" Marcus studied Elena's face, clearly sensing that something was off. "Elena, you look shaken up. Are you sure you don't need help? If something's wrong with Mia, I can take a look at her." Before Elena could respond, they both heard Mia's distinctive giggle coming from the backyard, followed by a sound that made Marcus's eyes widen in disbelief. It was the unmistakable huffing sound of a bear. "Elena, please tell me that wasn't what I think it was," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Elena's heart sank. There was no way to explain this without Marcus seeing it for himself, and once he did, everything would change. The authorities would have to be called, the bears would be taken away, and the incredible connection she had witnessed between Mia and the animals would be broken. But before she could figure out what to say, Mia's voice carried clearly from the backyard. "Mama, Bear Baby better now." Marcus looked at Elena with a mixture of concern and disbelief. "Elena, is there actually a bear in your backyard with Mia?" The question hung in the air between them. Elena knew that her next words would determine what happened to the bears, to Mia, and to the extraordinary situation that was still unfolding behind her house. She could lie and try to get Marcus to leave, but that would only delay the inevitable. Or she could trust him with the truth and hope that he would understand. From the backyard came another sound that made the decision for her. It was the mother bear, making a low, urgent rumbling noise that Elena had learned to recognize as distress. Something was wrong. "Marcus, I need you to promise me that you'll stay calm and think like a doctor, not like someone who's afraid of wild animals," Elena said quickly. "Because what I'm about to show you is going to challenge everything you think you know about animal behavior." Without waiting for his response, Elena hurried back toward the backyard with Marcus following close behind. When they rounded the corner of the house, both of them stopped in their tracks. The scene had changed dramatically in the few minutes Elena had been gone. The bear cub was now standing, though unsteadily, and was trying to walk toward the house. Mia was walking beside it, one tiny hand resting on its back as if she was helping to support it. But most shocking of all, the mother bear was following closely behind them, making soft, encouraging sounds to her cub. It looked like a bizarre procession: a toddler, a wounded bear cub, and a massive mother bear, all moving together toward Elena's back door. Marcus grabbed Elena's arm, his voice barely a whisper. "Elena, what in the hell is happening here?" Before Elena could answer, Mia looked up and saw them watching. Her face broke into a huge smile, and she pointed excitedly at the cub. "Mama, Bear Baby walked to Doctor. Mia, help." The words hit Elena like a lightning bolt. Somehow, incredibly, it seemed like Mia was leading the injured cub toward the house. Not just comforting it, but actually guiding it somewhere specific, and the mother bear was allowing it to happen. The cub stumbled slightly, and Mia immediately stopped and made soothing sounds until it regained its balance. The mother bear moved closer and gently nudged her cub with her nose, encouraging it to continue. "They're coming to the house," Elena said in amazement. "Mia is bringing them to the house." Marcus was speechless, his mouth hanging open as he watched the impossible scene unfold. As a doctor, he had seen many remarkable things, but nothing that could have prepared him for this. The small group had almost reached the back door when the cub suddenly collapsed again. This time, its breathing became labored, and Elena could see that the wound had started bleeding more heavily. The tranquilizer dart injury, combined with the exertion of walking, was taking its toll on the small animal. Mia immediately sat down beside the cub and placed both her hands on its side, humming her wordless tune again. The mother bear moved closer and began licking her cub's head with gentle, careful strokes. "Elena," Marcus said quietly, "I think that cub is going into shock. Look at its breathing pattern and the way its pupils are dilating. If it doesn't get medical attention soon—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. Elena could see the same signs he was observing. The cub was deteriorating rapidly, and despite the incredible bond it seemed to have formed with Mia, it was still a wild animal that needed professional veterinary care. But the nearest veterinarian was 30 miles away, and Elena wasn't sure the cub would survive the journey. Unless— "Marcus, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I think we need to treat this cub here, now, with whatever supplies I have," Elena said, her medical training overriding her caution about treating wildlife. "Elena, that's a wild animal. We can't just—" "Look at them," Elena interrupted, gesturing toward Mia and the bears. "Look at how calm they are, how the mother is trusting us with her cub. This isn't normal animal behavior, Marcus. Something extraordinary is happening here, and that cub is going to die if we don't help it." As if to emphasize Elena's point, the cub let out a weak whimper, and Mia responded by lying down beside it and wrapping her tiny arms around its neck in a gentle hug. The mother bear watched this interaction and then did something that left both doctors stunned. She looked directly at Elena and Marcus, and then deliberately moved away from her cub, positioning herself several feet back as if giving them permission to approach and help. "Did that bear just give us permission to treat her cub?" Marcus asked in disbelief. Elena was already moving toward her medical bag. "I don't know what's happening here, Marcus, but I do know that we're doctors, and there's a patient who needs our help. Everything else we can figure out later." Marcus hesitated for only a moment before his medical training took over. "Okay, but we need to be extremely careful. If that mother bear changes her mind about us helping her cub—" "She won't," Elena said with surprising confidence. "I can't explain it, but I know she won't hurt us. Look at how she's watching Mia." Indeed, the mother bear's attention was focused entirely on the little girl who was still lying beside her cub, humming softly. The massive animal's expression was almost tender as she observed Mia's gentle care for her injured baby. Elena opened her medical bag and began pulling out supplies. She had basic wound care materials, antibiotics, and some pain medication that might work on the cub, though she had never treated a bear before. As she prepared to work, she noticed something that made her pause. The cub's fur around the wound was partially shaved. Someone had definitely used a tranquilizer dart on this animal, and recently. But the shaving job was sloppy, uneven, as if it had been done hastily or by someone without proper veterinary training. "Marcus, look at this," Elena said quietly, pointing to the shaved area. "This cub was darted by someone, but whoever did it wasn't a professional. See how rough the shave job is? And the dart wound is in the wrong location. A trained veterinarian would never aim for this spot." Marcus moved closer to examine the wound while keeping a watchful eye on the mother bear. "You're right, this looks like amateur work, but why would someone be darting bear cubs in the first place?" Before Elena could respond, they heard the sound of vehicles approaching on the road that ran past their property. Not just one vehicle, but several, moving fast and coming to a stop somewhere nearby. Elena's house was at the end of a dead-end street, so any vehicles coming this way were specifically looking for something. The mother bear's demeanor changed instantly. Her head snapped up, ears alert, and she let out a low, warning growl. But strangely, her aggressive posture wasn't directed at Elena and Marcus. Instead, she was looking toward the front of the house, toward the sound of the vehicles. "Mama scared," Mia said, looking up at the mother bear with concern. She reached out and patted the large animal's paw, and remarkably the bear's aggressive stance softened slightly at the child's touch. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. If the mother bear was afraid of whoever was in those vehicles, it meant they were likely the ones responsible for injuring her cub. And if they were looking for the bears, finding them in Elena's backyard would put not only the animals in danger, but Mia and themselves as well. "We need to get everyone inside now," Elena said urgently. But even as she spoke, she realized the impossibility of what she was suggesting. How do you convince a 300-pound wild bear to enter your house? The answer came from an unexpected source. Mia stood up and walked toward the back door, turning to look at the bears and patting her leg the same way she would call a dog. "Come, bear mama. Come, bear baby. Inside safe." To Elena and Marcus's amazement, the mother bear actually moved toward the door, gently nudging her cub to encourage it to follow. The injured cub struggled to its feet, leaning heavily against Mia's small frame, as they all moved toward the house. "This is insane," Marcus whispered, but he was already moving to open the back door wider to accommodate the large animals. As they helped guide the bears into Elena's kitchen, they could hear voices coming from the front yard. Male voices speaking in hushed but urgent tones. Elena caught fragments of conversation through the windows. "Tracks lead this way. The cub can't have gone far. Need to find it before..." Elena's kitchen had never felt smaller than it did with 2 bears, 2 adults, and a toddler crowded inside. The mother bear immediately positioned herself between her cub and the front of the house, while the injured cub collapsed near the kitchen table, its breathing still labored. Mia seemed completely at ease with the situation, sitting cross-legged beside the cub and continuing her gentle humming. The wounded animal's eyes were focused on her face, as if drawing strength from her presence. "Elena, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer," Marcus said quietly. "Have you noticed anything unusual in the forest around here lately? Any strange activity, people who don't belong, anything out of the ordinary?" Elena was about to say no when she remembered something. "Actually, yes. About a week ago I saw some men in camouflage near the old logging trail. They had equipment with them, but they didn't look like hunters or hikers. When they saw me watching from my window, they packed up quickly and left." "What kind of equipment?" "I couldn't see clearly from that distance, but it looked medical. White cases, something that might have been a dart gun. I thought maybe they were wildlife researchers, but something felt off about them." A loud knock on the front door interrupted their conversation. All 3 adults froze, and the mother bear's ears flattened against her head. Even more concerning, the injured cub tried to struggle to its feet, clearly agitated by whatever presence was at the door. "Dr. Chen, this is Officer Jake Sullivan with Cedar Falls Police. We need to speak with you about a wildlife incident in your area." Elena recognized the name but not the voice. Jake Sullivan was a local police officer she had treated in the emergency room a few months ago for a minor injury, but this voice sounded different. Harder, more official than the friendly young officer she remembered. "We also have some wildlife specialists with us who need to search your property for a potentially dangerous animal that may be injured and seeking shelter." Elena's blood ran cold. These weren't legitimate wildlife officials. If they were, they would have proper identification and wouldn't need to search private property without a warrant unless there was immediate danger to humans. Marcus must have had the same thought because he was already pulling out his phone. "I'm calling the real police," he whispered. But before he could dial, Mia stood up and walked toward the front door with the confidence of someone much older than 18 months. The mother bear immediately moved to follow her, positioning herself protectively behind the little girl. "No, Mia, come back here," Elena whispered urgently, but her daughter was already at the front door, standing on her tiptoes to reach the handle. The knocking came again, more insistent this time. "Dr. Chen, we know you're home. Your car is in the driveway and neighbors saw you earlier this morning. We just need a few minutes of your time." Mia pressed her ear against the door, listening intently. Then she did something that shocked everyone in the room. She turned back to look at the mother bear and shook her head firmly, making a shush sound with her finger to her lips. The mother bear seemed to understand completely. She backed away from the door and lay down flat against the kitchen floor, making herself as invisible as possible. Even more remarkably, she used her massive paw to gently push her injured cub down beside her, encouraging it to stay low and quiet. Elena stared in disbelief. It was as if Mia and the mother bear were communicating in a way that transcended species barriers. The little girl somehow understood that the people at the door were a threat to the bears, and the mother bear trusted Mia's judgment enough to follow her guidance. "Dr. Chen, if you don't answer the door, we're going to have to assume there's an emergency situation and enter the premises for a welfare check." This was definitely not legitimate police procedure. Elena made a quick decision. She picked up Mia and carried her to the front door, motioning for Marcus to stay in the kitchen with the bears. Elena opened the door just wide enough to see outside, keeping her body positioned to block any view into the house. Standing on her porch were 3 men in mismatched uniforms. One wore what looked like a police uniform, but the badge was wrong, and the patches didn't match Cedar Falls PD. The other 2 were dressed in military-style clothing with Wildlife Services patches that looked recently sewn on. "Officer Sullivan," Elena said, though she was certain this wasn't the same Jake Sullivan she knew. "Yes, ma'am. We've had reports of a dangerous bear in this area, possibly injured and acting aggressively. We need to search your property to ensure your safety and that of your neighbors." Elena hugged Mia closer to her chest. "I haven't seen any bears on my property." "When was this reported?" "Early this morning. A neighbor called in saying they heard unusual animal sounds coming from this direction." The fake officer's eyes kept trying to peer past Elena into the house. "Mind if we come in and check around?" "Just to be safe." "Actually, I do mind," Elena said firmly. "If you're really with the police, you can show me proper identification and explain why you don't have a warrant to search my home." The 3 men exchanged glances, and Elena could see their friendly facade beginning to crack. The man, claiming to be Officer Sullivan, stepped closer, and Elena caught a whiff of something chemical on his clothing. It smelled like the sedatives used in veterinary procedures. "Ma'am, we're trying to protect you and your child. If there's an injured bear on your property, it could be extremely dangerous. We just need to make sure you're safe." Mia, who had been quietly observing the men, suddenly pointed at the fake officer and said clearly, "Bad man. Hurt bear baby." The 3 men's expressions changed completely. The pretense of being helpful officials disappeared, replaced by something much more threatening. "Dr. Chen, I think you know more about this situation than you're letting on," the fake Sullivan said, his voice dropping to a menacing tone. "We're looking for a very valuable piece of research property that was stolen from our facility. The longer it remains missing, the more problematic this situation becomes for everyone involved." Elena's heart was pounding, but she forced herself to remain calm. "I don't know what you're talking about, and I think it's time for you to leave my property." She started to close the door, but one of the other men stepped forward and blocked it with his boot. "Dr. Chen, let's not make this more difficult than it needs to be. We know the research subject came this way." Our tracking equipment shows it stopped moving somewhere very close to this location. Research subject. They were talking about the bear cub like it was a laboratory specimen, not a living animal. Elena felt sick as she realized what was happening. These people had been experimenting on wild bears, and now they wanted to recapture the cub that had escaped. From inside the house came a sound that made everyone freeze. It was Marcus's voice, speaking loudly enough to be heard outside. "Elena, I just got off the phone with the real Cedar Falls Police Department. Officer Jake Sullivan is currently on vacation in Florida, and they have no reports of any wildlife incidents in this area today." The fake officers' faces hardened. The man blocking the door reached inside his jacket, and Elena caught a glimpse of what looked like a tranquilizer gun. "Dr. Chen, you're interfering with official government research. That's a federal crime. Now, we can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way, but we are going to search your property." Elena's mind raced. She had to protect Mia, Marcus, and the bears, but she was outnumbered and outgunned. The men were clearly prepared to use force to get what they wanted. But then something happened that changed everything. From behind Elena came a sound that made all three fake officers step backward in alarm. It was the deep, rumbling growl of the mother bear, who had apparently heard enough of the conversation to understand that these men were a threat to her cub. The massive bear appeared in the hallway behind Elena, moving with surprising stealth for such a large animal. Her lips were pulled back, showing impressive canine teeth, and her eyes were fixed on the men at the door with unmistakable hostility. But the most shocking part was that Mia wasn't afraid. Instead, she wiggled out of Elena's arms and walked calmly over to the mother bear, placing her tiny hand on the animal's massive leg. The bear's aggressive posture immediately softened, though she continued to watch the intruders warily. "That bear is with you," the fake Sullivan said, his voice filled with disbelief. "You've been harboring stolen research property. That bear is a wild animal protecting her injured cub from people who have been experimenting on her baby," Elena said firmly. "And if you don't leave my property immediately, I'm going to let her explain to you personally how she feels about that." The mother bear took a step forward, positioning herself between Mia and the men at the door. Her message was clear. She would protect the little girl who had shown kindness to her cub, just as fiercely as she would protect her own baby. The three men were clearly unprepared for this development. They had expected to find a missing research subject, not a protective mother bear who had formed an alliance with the humans who were helping her cub. "This isn't over, Doctor." "Chen," the fake Sullivan said, backing away from the door. "That animal represents years of valuable research. Our employers won't just let it disappear." "Your employers can expect to hear from both the real police and the State Wildlife Department," Elena replied. "I'm sure they'll be very interested to learn about illegal animal experimentation being conducted in our national forest." As the three men retreated to their vehicles, Elena could see them talking urgently on radio equipment. They weren't giving up. They were calling for backup or new instructions. Elena closed and locked the door, then immediately called 911 on her cell phone. As she waited for the dispatcher to answer, she looked around her kitchen at the extraordinary scene. Marcus was tending to the injured bear cub with her medical supplies. The mother bear was lying protectively nearby, and Mia was sitting between them all, humming her wordless tune, and somehow keeping everyone calm. 911, what's your emergency?" "This is Dr. Elena Chen on Pine Ridge Road. I need to report men impersonating police officers, illegal wildlife experimentation, and I need both real police and wildlife officials here immediately." As Elena gave her address and explained the basic situation to the dispatcher, she realized that their quiet morning had turned into something much larger and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. The injured bear cub wasn't just a wild animal that had wandered into their yard. It was evidence of illegal research that someone was willing to commit crimes to recover. And somehow, her 18-month-old daughter had become the key to protecting not just one bear family, but potentially exposing an entire illegal operation. The dispatcher assured Elena that units were being sent immediately, but as she hung up the phone, she could see through the front window that the fake officers' vehicles were still parked on the road nearby. They weren't leaving, they were waiting. "Marcus, how's the cub doing?" Elena asked, moving back to the kitchen. "Better, actually. I've cleaned and bandaged the wound, and I managed to get some antibiotics into him. But Elena, this injury, it's not just from a tranquilizer dart. Someone performed surgery on this animal. Look at these small incision marks along its abdomen." Elena knelt down to examine what Marcus was showing her. He was right. There were several small, precise cuts that had been closed with surgical glue. Someone had operated on this bear cub, and recently. "They were experimenting on him," Elena said quietly, feeling sick. "That's why they're so desperate to get him back. He's not just a research subject. He's evidence of what they've been doing." Mia looked up from where she was sitting beside the cub and said something that chilled Elena to the bone. "More bear babies hurt." Mia saw a dream. Elena stared at her daughter. Mia had always been an unusual child, seeming to understand things beyond her age, but this was different. "What do you mean, sweetheart? What did you see?" Mia pointed toward the forest visible through the kitchen window. "Cage place. Many bear babies crying. Bad men hurt them." Marcus and Elena exchanged alarmed glances. If Mia was right, the cub they were treating wasn't the only victim. There were more bears being held and experimented on somewhere in the forest near their home. The mother bear, who had been listening to their conversation, suddenly stood up and walked to the window. She pressed her nose against the glass and made a low, mournful sound that seemed to confirm what Mia had said. Elena's phone rang, startling everyone. The caller ID showed an unknown number, but something told her she needed to answer. "Dr. Chen, this is Dr. Sarah Martinez with the State Wildlife Department. I understand you've reported some unusual activity in your area. I'm about 30 minutes away, but I need to warn you about something." "What kind of warning?" "We've been investigating reports of illegal wildlife research in your region for several weeks. The people involved are extremely dangerous, and they have connections that go much higher than local authorities. If you're harboring evidence of their activities, you and your family could be in serious danger." Elena looked around her kitchen at the bears, at Marcus, at Mia, who was still sitting peacefully among wild animals as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "Dr. Martinez, I think the evidence you're looking for just found me." There was a pause on the other end of the line before Dr. Martinez responded. "Dr. Chen, I need you to listen very carefully. Do not let anyone into your home who isn't wearing official state wildlife identification. There are people impersonating federal agents in your area, and they're armed with tranquilizer equipment. Can you confirm that you and your family are safe?" Elena looked toward the front window where she could still see the vehicles parked on the road. "We're safe for now, but there are 3 men claiming to be police officers outside. They left when we confronted them, but they haven't actually gone away. That matches what we've been tracking. Dr. Chen, what I'm about to tell you cannot leave this conversation until we have these people in custody. We believe there's an illegal research facility operating somewhere in the national forest near your location. They've been capturing wild bears, particularly cubs, and subjecting them to experimental procedures." Elena's stomach dropped. "What kind of procedures?" "We're not entirely sure yet, but from what our investigation has uncovered, They appear to be testing some kind of neurological enhancement or behavioral modification techniques. The goal seems to be creating animals with heightened intelligence or altered behavioral patterns. Elena looked at the mother bear, who was still standing by the window, but had turned her attention to Mia. The massive animal was watching the little girl with an expression that seemed far too intelligent for a normal wild bear. And Mia's ability to communicate with both bears in ways that defied explanation suddenly took on a much more sinister meaning. Dr. Martinez, if someone was experimenting on bear cubs to enhance their intelligence, could that explain why a mother bear would trust humans with her injured cub? That's exactly what we're afraid of. The enhanced bears may be developing cognitive abilities that make them behave in ways that seem almost human-like. But Dr. Chen, this also makes them extremely valuable to whoever is conducting these experiments. They won't give up easily. As if summoned by their conversation, Elena heard the sound of more vehicles approaching. These were different from the first group, heavier, moving more slowly. Through the front window, she could see what looked like a large white van with official government markings pulling up behind the first vehicles. More people just arrived, Elena reported to Dr. Martinez. It looks like a government van this time. Don't trust any government markings. These people have been known to use fake federal identification. Real federal wildlife agents would coordinate with local authorities first, not show up unannounced at private residences. The mother bear's behavior changed dramatically when she saw the new vehicle. She backed away from the window with clear agitation, making low growling sounds that seemed to communicate urgent distress to her cub. The injured cub, despite its weakened condition, immediately tried to stand and move toward the back of the house. Mia stood up and went to both bears, placing her small hands on each of them in turn. Scared, she said clearly. Bad cage place coming. Marcus looked up from where he was monitoring the cub's vital signs. Elena, that cub's heart rate just spiked dramatically. It's like it recognizes something about that van. Elena's blood ran cold. If the cub was showing this level of fear, response to the vehicle, it meant the animal had been in that van before, probably multiple times. Dr. Martinez, I think the van that just arrived is how they transport the bears to their facility. The cub is having what looks like a trauma response just from seeing it. Dr. Chen, I need you to keep those animals and yourselves hidden until I arrive. I'm driving as fast as I can, but I'm still 20 minutes away. The state police are also en route, but these people have been known to move quickly when they think their operation is being discovered. Elena heard a loud banging on her front door, much more aggressive than the previous knocking. This time, there was no pretense of politeness. Dr. Chen, this is Agent Thompson with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We have a federal warrant to search these premises for dangerous wildlife that poses a threat to public safety. Open the door immediately. Elena put Dr. Martinez on speakerphone so Marcus could hear the conversation while she dealt with the people at the door. Dr. Martinez, they're claiming to have a federal warrant now. It's fake. Dr. Martinez's voice came through the phone clearly. Real federal agents would have contacted local authorities first, and I would have been notified of any warrant in this area. Do not open that door. The banging became more insistent, and Elena could hear multiple voices outside now. It sounded like at least 6 or 7 people had arrived with the van. Dr. Chen, if you don't open this door voluntarily, we're authorized to enter by force for public safety reasons. Elena looked around her kitchen desperately. The bears were too large to hide effectively, and there was no way to get them out of the house without being seen. But then Mia did something that gave Elena an idea. The little girl walked over to a door that led to the basement and pointed downward. Bear, family, hide down. dark, safe place. Elena's basement was large and finished, with a separate entrance that led to the backyard. If they could get the bears downstairs, they might be able to get them out through the basement door and into the forest before the fake agents realized where they had gone. "Marcus, help me get them downstairs," Elena whispered urgently. But the mother bear was already moving toward the basement door, seeming to understand exactly what was needed. She gently nudged her cub toward the stairs, and remarkably the injured animal managed to walk slowly down the steps with the mother bear supporting it. Mia followed immediately behind them, and Marcus grabbed Elena's medical bag to continue monitoring the cub's condition in their new hiding place. Elena was the last one down the stairs, and she had just reached the basement when she heard the unmistakable sound of her front door being forced open. "Spread out and search every room," came a voice from upstairs. "The tracking device shows the subject stopped moving in this immediate area. It has to be here somewhere." Elena's heart nearly stopped. Tracking device. They had put some kind of tracking device in the bear cub, which meant they could pinpoint its exact location. She looked at Marcus, who was examining the cub more carefully in the light of the basement. "Marcus, check for any kind of implant or tracking device. If they can track this cub, we're not safe anywhere." Marcus began running his hands carefully over the cub's body, feeling for anything unusual. The mother bear watched nervously but allowed the examination, seeming to understand that Marcus was trying to help. "Here," Marcus whispered, pointing to a small area on the cub's neck where the fur was shorter. "There's something under the skin right here. It feels like a small electronic device." From upstairs, they could hear heavy footsteps moving through Elena's house, opening closets, checking under furniture. The voices were getting closer to the basement door. "Can you remove it?" Elena whispered. "With what we have here, maybe, but it would be risky and without proper anesthesia." Mia, who had been listening to their whispered conversation, suddenly moved close to the bear cub and placed both her hands on either side of its head. She began humming her wordless tune, but this time it was different. More complex, almost like she was singing in a language that only the bears could understand. The cub's entire body relaxed under Mia's touch, its breathing becoming slow and steady. Even more remarkably, it seemed to fall into a deep, peaceful sleep despite the danger surrounding them. "How did she do that?" Marcus whispered in amazement. Elena was wondering the same thing, but there was no time to figure it out. The footsteps upstairs were getting closer to the basement door, and they needed to remove that tracking device immediately. Marcus worked quickly with a small scalpel from Elena's medical bag, making a tiny incision over the device while the cub remained peacefully asleep under Mia's influence. Within minutes, he had extracted a small electronic chip about the size of a rice grain. "Got it," he whispered, holding up the tiny device. "But now, what do we do with it?" Elena thought quickly. If they destroyed the device, the fake agents would know something had happened to it. But if they could somehow make it appear that the cub had moved to a different location— "Give it to me," Elena said, taking the chip. She grabbed a small piece of medical tape and attached the device to the collar of their elderly golden retriever, Bailey, who had been sleeping peacefully in his basement bed through all the commotion. "Bailey's going to take a little walk outside," Elena whispered, gently waking the old dog and leading him toward the basement's exterior door. She quietly opened the door and encouraged Bailey to go outside, knowing the dog's habit was to wander around the yard and then head down the trail that led deeper into the forest behind their property. The tracking device would show the bear cub moving away from the house and into the woods, hopefully drawing the fake agents away. As Bailey disappeared into the trees, Elena heard one of the voices from upstairs shout, "The signal's moving." The subject is leaving the area, heading southeast into the forest. Immediately, the heavy footsteps above them began moving toward the front of the house. Through the small basement windows, Elena could see several figures in tactical gear running toward the tree line where Bailey had gone. But not all of them left. Elena could still hear at least 2 people moving around upstairs, conducting a thorough search of the house. "They're not giving up," Marcus whispered. "Some of them are still looking." The mother bear, who had been remarkably calm during the tracking device removal, suddenly became agitated again. She moved toward the basement's exterior door, sniffing the air with obvious concern. Mia looked up from where she was still sitting beside the sleeping cub. More bad people coming. Different bad people. Elena felt a chill of dread. If there were more people coming, it meant this operation was even larger than she had realized. And if they were different bad people, it suggested there were multiple groups involved in whatever was happening. Dr. Martinez's voice came through Elena's phone, which she had left on speaker. "Dr. Chen, are you still there? I'm getting reports of unusual activity in your area. Multiple vehicles, people in tactical gear. This is bigger than we thought." "We're in the basement," Elena whispered as quietly as possible. "Some of them left to follow a false signal. But there are still people in the house. And Mia says more people are coming. Different people. What does that mean?" Before Elena could answer, they heard a new sound from outside, helicopters. At least 2 of them, approaching fast and flying low. The mother bear's reaction was immediate and intense. She began making distressed sounds that Elena had never heard from any animal before. A combination of growling, whimpering, and what almost sounded like crying. The sleeping cub woke up immediately and tried to move closer to its mother, despite its injuries. "Helicopter bad," Mia said with absolute certainty. "Sky cage. Take bear babies away." Elena's mind raced as she realized what Mia was describing. The helicopters weren't just transportation. They were how the fake researchers captured bears in the first place. Flying cages that could swoop down and take animals away before anyone could stop them. "Dr. Martinez, there are helicopters coming. I think they're a part of the research operation." "That's impossible. We would have been notified of any authorized helicopter activity in that area." "These aren't authorized," Elena said grimly. "Nothing about this operation is authorized." The helicopters were getting closer, and Elena could see through the basement windows that they were equipped with large nets hanging beneath them. They were definitely set up for capturing animals. But then, something unexpected happened. The sounds from upstairs changed completely. Instead of the methodical searching they had been hearing, there were now shouts, running footsteps, and what sounded like a struggle. "This is the real Cedar Falls Police Department. Drop your weapons and get on the ground." Elena felt a surge of relief. The real police had finally arrived. But her relief was short-lived when she heard gunshots from outside, followed by the helicopters changing course and moving away rapidly. "The helicopters are leaving," Marcus observed, looking out the small basement window. "Dr. Chen, this is Officer Martinez with Cedar Falls PD," came a voice from upstairs. "We have several suspects in custody, but we need to make sure you and your family are safe. Can you come upstairs?" Elena hesitated. After everything that had happened, she was having trouble trusting anyone who claimed to be an official. "Can you prove you're really with the police?" "Dr. Chen, this is Dr. Sarah Martinez," came a familiar voice. "I just arrived with the police units. It's safe to come upstairs now." Elena looked at the bears, who were both still showing signs of stress but no longer seemed to be in immediate panic. Mia was sitting between them, one hand on each animal, and both bears appeared to be drawing comfort from her presence. "What do we do about them?" Marcus asked, gesturing toward the bears. Elena thought carefully. The fake researchers were in custody, but that didn't mean the bears were safe. If word got out about the mother bear's unusual behavior and the cub's enhanced intelligence, they could become the target of legitimate but equally harmful research. "Mia, can you ask the bear mama if she wants to go back to the forest?" Elena asked her daughter. Mia looked seriously at the mother bear and made a series of soft sounds that weren't quite words but seemed to carry meaning. The mother bear responded with gentle, huffing sounds and then did something that took Elena's breath away. The massive animal walked over to Elena and gently pressed her forehead against Elena's chest, holding the contact for several long moments. It was unmistakably a gesture of gratitude and affection. Then the mother bear moved to Marcus and repeated the gesture, thanking him for treating her cub's injuries. Finally, she approached Mia, but instead of the forehead touch, she very gently licked the little girl's face with obvious tenderness. Mia giggled and wrapped her tiny arms around the bear's massive neck in a hug that should have been impossible. "Bear, Mama says thank you," Mia translated. "Bear baby all better now. Go home to forest, but not forget Mia." The cub, who had been sleeping peacefully, woke up and struggled to its feet. It was moving much better now, the combination of medical treatment and rest having helped significantly. The young animal walked over to each of the humans and gently nuzzled them, its own way of saying goodbye. "Dr. Chen?" Dr. Martinez's voice came from the top of the basement stairs. "I'm coming down. I need to see what we're dealing with here." Elena heard careful footsteps on the basement stairs, and then Dr. Martinez appeared, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and official wildlife department identification clearly visible. Dr. Martinez stopped in her tracks when she saw the scene in the basement. Her eyes widened as she took in the mother bear, the cub, and most shocking of all, little Mia sitting peacefully between them. "My God," Dr. Martinez whispered. "The reports were true. They actually succeeded in creating enhanced cognitive function in wild bears." "Enhanced cognitive function?" Elena asked. "The illegal research we've been investigating. They were trying to increase intelligence in wild animals through a combination of surgical procedures and chemical treatments. Most of the experiments failed, but it looks like they had at least one success." Dr. Martinez approached slowly, and the mother bear watched her carefully but showed no signs of aggression. "The question now is, what do we do about it? Bears with enhanced intelligence can't simply be released back into the wild. They could be dangerous, or they could become targets for other researchers who want to study them." Elena felt her heart sink. After everything they had been through, were the bears going to end up in captivity anyway? But Mia stood up and walked over to Dr. Martinez with the same confidence she had shown with the fake agents. She looked up at the wildlife official and said clearly, "Bear family smart but good. Not hurt people. Just want to be free in forest." Dr. Martinez knelt down to Mia's level, studying the little girl's face. "You can understand them, can't you? Not just the bears. You understand what they're thinking and feeling." Mia nodded seriously. "Bears talk different, but Mia can hear. They very sad in cage place, very happy to be free. Promise to stay away from people houses." Dr. Martinez looked from Mia to the bears and back again. Elena could see the internal struggle on the woman's face, her scientific training telling her that these animals needed to be studied, but her compassion recognizing that they were intelligent beings who deserved freedom. "There's something else, Doctor," Martinez said slowly. "The facility we raided this morning, there were 12 other bear cubs there, all of them showing various levels of enhanced intelligence, all of them traumatized from the procedures they underwent." Elena's heart broke, thinking about the other cubs who had suffered through what this little one had experienced. What happens to them now? Marcus asked. That's the problem. Traditional rehabilitation programs aren't equipped to handle animals with altered cognitive abilities. They need specialized care, but every facility we approach is going to want to study them rather than simply care for them. Mia walked back to the mother bear and placed her hand on the animal's leg. After a moment of what looked like silent communication, she turned back to Dr. Martinez. Bear, Mama says she can help other bear babies, teach them how to be free again, but need safe place, no more cage people. Dr. Martinez stared at Mia in amazement. She's offering to help rehabilitate the other cubs? A wild bear is volunteering to act as a surrogate mother to traumatized research subjects. Elena realized they were witnessing something unprecedented in wildlife behavior. The enhanced intelligence hadn't just made the bears smarter. It had given them empathy and understanding that crossed species boundaries. Is there any way to make that work? Elena asked. Some kind of protected area where the bears could live freely but safely. Dr. Martinez was quiet for a long moment, clearly thinking through possibilities. There might be. There's a remote section of the national forest that's been closed to public access due to ecological restoration efforts. It's monitored but not visited regularly. If we could establish it as an unofficial sanctuary. Bear, Mama says yes, Maya said before Dr. Martinez had finished speaking. Good place for bear family to heal and be free. Elena looked around at the extraordinary group gathered in her basement. A wildlife official contemplating bending rules to help enhanced bears. A fellow doctor who had spent his morning performing veterinary surgery. Her 18-month-old daughter, who could apparently communicate with wild animals, and a bear family that had trusted humans enough to seek help for their injured cub. It had started as a simple morning when Mia spotted an injured animal in their backyard. Now, it was becoming something that could change how humans and wildlife interacted forever. But there was still one more surprise waiting for them. As Dr. Martinez began making calls to arrange the sanctuary, and the bears prepared to leave through the basement door to rejoin their natural habitat, Mia suddenly stopped and tilted her head, as if listening to something only she could hear. "More friends coming," she announced with excitement, pointing toward the forest. Elena looked out the basement window but saw nothing unusual. "What friends, sweetheart?" Before Mia could answer, the most extraordinary sound filled the air around them. It started as a low rumbling, almost like distant thunder, but then grew into a complex harmony of animal voices. Bears, lots of them, calling out in what sounded like a celebration. Through the trees, Elena could see shapes moving toward the house. Not just one or two animals, but an entire procession. The 12 rescued bear cubs from the research facility were approaching, and they weren't alone. Adult bears, wild bears who had never been captured, were walking alongside them in the most unprecedented display of interspecies cooperation anyone had ever witnessed. Dr. Martinez stopped her phone conversation mid-sentence, staring out the window in disbelief. "That's impossible. Wild bears don't form groups like that. They're solitary animals." But Mia was already running toward the basement door, her face bright with joy. "Bear babies all free, coming to say thank you." The mother bear in their basement made a sound Elena had never heard before, a deep musical call that seemed to contain pure happiness. Her cub, despite its recent trauma, struggled to its feet and joined its mother in what could only be described as a song. As the procession of bears reached the edge of Elena's backyard, something magical happened. One by one, each of the rescued cubs approached the basement door where Mia stood waiting. Each small bear gently touched the little girl with its nose or paw, and she responded by placing her tiny hands on each of them in turn. Elena watched in wonder as her daughter seemed to have a brief, silent conversation with each cub. Some of them appeared to be sharing their stories. Others seemed to be expressing gratitude, and a few looked like they were making promises for the future. "They're telling her about the bad place," Mia explained to the amazed adults, "but also about dreams of good forest home. They say Mia is special friend who helped save all bear babies." The adult wild bears, who had somehow learned about the rescue and chosen to escort the traumatized cubs to safety, maintained a respectful distance, but their presence sent a clear message. The enhanced bears would be protected and welcomed back into the wild community. Dr. Martinez wiped tears from her eyes as she watched the incredible scene. "In 30 years of wildlife work, I've never seen anything like this. It's as if the entire bear population in this region understands what happened and is coming together to heal it." Marcus shook his head in amazement. "Elena, do you realize what your daughter has done? She didn't just save one bear cub. She somehow facilitated the rescue and rehabilitation of 13 research subjects and created a bond between enhanced and wild bears that could change everything we know about animal intelligence and emotion." But Elena was focused on something else entirely. As she watched Mia interacting with the bears, she realized that her daughter's gift wasn't just about communicating with animals. Mia had the ability to bridge differences, to create understanding between beings who should have been afraid of each other, and to inspire others to act with compassion, even when it meant taking risks. The injured cub, now strong enough to walk on its own, approached Mia one last time. The little bear looked directly into her eyes and made a soft sound that needed no translation. It was saying goodbye, but also making a promise that they would see each other again. Mia hugged the cub gently and whispered something in its ear that made the young animal's eyes brighten with what looked remarkably like joy. As the sun began to set, the entire group of bears began to move toward the forest sanctuary that Dr. Martinez had arranged. The rescued cubs walked surrounded by their wild cousins, protected and guided toward their new home. The mother bear who had started this incredible journey stopped at the edge of the trees and looked back at Elena's house one more time. She raised herself up on her hind legs and made a gesture that looked unmistakably like a wave, acknowledging the humans who had helped save not just her cub, but an entire generation of bear children. Mia waved back enthusiastically, calling out, "Bye-bye, bear family. See you in forest soon." Elena picked up her daughter and held her close, still hardly believing everything that had happened in one extraordinary day. "How did you know, Mia? How did you know the bear baby needed help?" Mia looked up at her mother with eyes that seemed far too wise for an 18-month-old child. "Bear, Mama told Mia in dream. Said her baby was hurt and scared and needed kind people to help. Mia said yes, we help all bear babies be free and happy." As the last of the bears disappeared into the forest, Elena realized that this was only the beginning. Mia's gift for communicating with animals, for inspiring compassion and healing, would likely lead to many more extraordinary adventures. But for now, it was enough to know that 13 bear cubs who had suffered through terrible experiences were finally free, protected by both enhanced intelligence and the ancient wisdom of the wild. Dr. Martinez approached Elena as they prepared to go back into the house. "Dr. Chen, I have a feeling this won't be the last time we work together. Your daughter has a very special gift, and there are a lot of animals in this world who could use her help." Elena looked down at Mia, who was already humming her wordless tune and looking toward the forest with bright, hopeful eyes. "I think you're right, Dr. Martinez. I think this is just the beginning of something wonderful." That night, as Elena tucked Mia into bed, her daughter looked up at her and said, "Mama, tomorrow can we visit bear babies in Forest Home?" They want to show Mia the good cave they found. Helena smiled and kissed her daughter's forehead. We'll see, sweetheart, we'll see. Outside their window, the forest was alive with the sounds of bears settling into their new sanctuary, cubs playing safely for the first time in months, adults sharing food and companionship, and somewhere in the distance the gentle calls of a mother bear singing her babies to sleep. The story of the human baby who led a bleeding bear cub to safety had become something much more extraordinary. The tale of a little girl who helped heal the wounds between humans and wildlife, and who showed the world that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can create the biggest miracles. As Mia drifted off to sleep, she was already dreaming of her next adventure with her forest friends, knowing that wherever there were animals in need, she would be ready to help. Because that's what friends do for each other, no matter how different they might seem on the outside. And in the sanctuary deep in the forest, 13 bear cubs slept peacefully for the first time in months, dreaming of the brave little human girl who had saved them all.